You're right, Mary. We've got to have a great show with a million laughs and color and a lot of lights to make it sparkle. And songs. Wonderful songs with you out there selling them.
There is a type of performer who exists in a category entirely their own, not because they are the best at any single thing, though they may well be, but because the range of what they can do defies the usual categories entirely. Singer, dancer, actor, comedian, musician, impressionist, mimic. The list goes on and keeps going, and at some point you stop trying to categorize and simply say, entertainer, the real thing, the complete article, the kind that arrives once or twice in a generation, and that the industry, which runs on specialization, does not quite know what to do with. Mickey Rooney was the complete article for 9 decades, without stopping. Joseph Ewell Jr. was born on September 23, 1920, in Brooklyn, New York, into a family so thoroughly embedded in vaudeville that the stage was less a career choice than a geographical fact. His parents were performers. The theater was where they lived and worked and raised their child, and the child absorbed it the way children absorb whatever surrounds them, completely, unconsciously, as if it were simply the nature of the world. He was 17 months old when he first appeared on stage. Let that number sit for a moment. Not 17 years, 17 months. A toddler in a miniature tuxedo, performing for a vaudeville audience, already demonstrating the quality that would define the next 90 years of his professional life. A total absence of stage fright, a complete comfort in front of an audience, a sense that the relationship between performer and crowd was the most natural thing in the world, and the world outside it the stranger place by far. He was billed as Mickey McGuire through the 1920s and early 1930s, playing a scrappy street kid in a series of short films based on a popular comic strip, and the name stuck, not the McGuire, but the Mickey, which was changed to Rooney when the studio needed to separate him from the character and attach his identity to something more flexible. He was already, by the time he was a teenager, one of the most experienced performers in Hollywood, a man in a boy's body who had been working longer than most of his adult colleagues and who had, in the process, developed a technical fluency across multiple disciplines that formal training rarely produces, because formal training tends to narrow rather than expand. MGM signed him, and the studio system that had taken so many people and reduced them to a single marketable quality found in Mickey Rooney something it could not reduce, because there was always more of it than fit in any single container. He played Andy Hardy, the all-American small-town boy, across a series of films that made him the #1 box office draw in America from 1939 to 1941. He made musicals with Judy Garland, his friend and his co-conspirator, that had the quality of genuine joy rather than manufactured entertainment, because the two of them together produced something neither could produce alone. He received an honorary Academy Award at 19, the youngest recipient in history, in recognition of a career that had already lasted longer than most actors' entire professional lives. He was 5 feet 2 inches tall. He never appeared to notice. The thing about Mickey Rooney that the cheerful public image and the Andy Hardy wholesomeness obscured was the depth of genuine talent underneath it. He was not a child star who had gotten lucky with a likable persona. He was a musician, a jazz drummer of real ability who could hold his own with professional musicians and who played for the love of it rather than the performance of loving it. He was a mimic of extraordinary precision, capable of reproducing accents and mannerisms with a fidelity that suggested he was listening to people more carefully than they were listening to themselves. He could play piano, organ, and several other instruments with the competence of someone who had spent serious time with each. And he could act, in the full dramatic sense, in ways that the Andy Hardy films had not required and that Hollywood was slow to explore, because the box office returns on the formula were too good to risk varying. When directors finally gave him the material, the results were startling. Boys Town in 1938 opposite Spencer Tracy, The Human Comedy in 1943 for which he received an Academy Award nomination, and which required him to carry a film of genuine emotional weight with the fullness of a mature performer rather than the charm of a juvenile star. Babes in Arms, in which he and Judy Garland gave the "let's put on a show" formula a manic energy that no subsequent version of the formula has quite matched. The private life was conducted with the same intensity and the same disregard for moderation that characterized everything else about him. 8 marriages. 8. The first to Ava Gardner, yes, that Ava Gardner, who was 18 and he was 21, and the marriage lasted barely a year, which Ava later described as the experience that taught her everything she needed to know about the difference between charm and compatibility. He was charming, nobody ever disputed that. The compatibility was another question. He said, with the timing of a man who had been working a crowd since he was 17 months old, "Always get married in the morning. That way, if it doesn't work out, you haven't wasted a whole day." The line is so perfectly constructed that it is almost impossible to believe it was not written for him, but it was his, and it captures in a single sentence the quality that made him both magnetic and exhausting to be around. He processed everything through the joke. The joke was always ready. The joke was sometimes more honest than the direct statement would have been. The war interrupted his career at its commercial peak. He was drafted in 1944 and served in the European theater, entertaining troops and performing in shows with the same unstoppable energy he brought to everything else. And the career he returned to was not the career he had left. The Andy Hardy era was over. The formula that had made him the top box office draw in America had run its course while he was away, and the studio system that had built him was beginning the long, slow process of its own dissolution. He adapted. He always adapted. It was the one thing 9 decades of performing had made absolutely certain, that whatever the current situation required, Mickey Rooney could do it. The middle decades of his career are a catalog of reinventions so persistent that it stops seeming like strategy and starts seeming like nature. Television, when it arrived, was not a step down for him. It was a new audience and a new format, and he approached it with the curiosity of someone who had been finding new audiences and new formats since before most of the medium's executives had been born. He did dramatic television. He did variety television. He hosted. He guested. He appeared in commercials and Broadway shows and dinner theater and Las Vegas revues and anywhere else that needed someone who could walk onto a stage and own it within the first 30 seconds. Sugar Babies on Broadway in 1979, a vaudeville revue he co-starred in with Ann Miller, ran for nearly 1,200 performances and reminded a generation that had only known him from television that the live performer who had started in vaudeville at 17 months old had never lost a single thing that the vaudeville had given him. The timing, the physical ease, the absolute authority in front of an audience, all of it intact across 6 decades of continuous use, like a piece of craftsmanship that improves rather than degrades with handling. The film work continued too. The Black Stallion in 1979 gave him a supporting role that the Academy recognized with a nomination, his 5th, and that demonstrated once again what the Andy Hardy years had obscured, that underneath the manic energy and the perpetual performance was an actor of genuine depth who could, when the material asked for stillness, be entirely still. Bill in 1981, a television film in which he played a developmentally disabled man, won him an Emmy and a Peabody, and the kind of critical recognition that the variety and the showmanship had sometimes made it easy for the industry to overlook. The financial life was as chaotic as the personal life. He earned and spent fortunes with the same enthusiasm, and the spending consistently outpaced the earning in ways that kept him working when other men his age had long since retired. He was not bitter about it. Bitterness was not in his repertoire, which was otherwise essentially unlimited. He worked because he loved to work, and he worked because he needed to work, and the two reasons together produced a career of such astonishing longevity that historians of the entertainment industry run out of comparisons. He received an honorary Academy Award for Lifetime Achievement in 1983, his second honorary Oscar, a distinction he shared with no one, and he received it in the manner he received everything, with full engagement, full presence, and the instinctive sense of where the laugh was and how to find it without losing the genuine feeling underneath. He died on April 6, 2014, in North Hollywood, California, at the age of 93. He had been working until close to the end, still performing, still recording, still the most energetic person in whatever room he was in, still operating on the engine that had been running since a toddler in a miniature tuxedo walked onto a vaudeville stage and discovered that audiences and performers need each other in the specific, irreplaceable way that food and hunger need each other. 9 decades, 17 months to 93 years, the boy who never stopped. He proved something that the entertainment industry occasionally forgets and always needs to be reminded of, that talent without joy is technique, and joy without talent is charm, but talent and joy together, sustained across 90 years of continuous work, is something else entirely. It is a life, fully and completely and without reservation, lived. And that, in the end, is the only performance that truly matters.